Waiting for everyone to come on. We'll just start. Hey, welcome everyone to the 29th Ask the Chief Forum. Okay, we're going to continue with questions and answers. So before we get started, we're just going to do the exercise. Everyone knows how it goes. So, I'm going to do about 3 of these. 1, 2, and 3.
And Leslie, your video is on. We're getting.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay. Now, approximately 12 inches apart. Right, you should start to feel that energy building up in your hands. And when not feeling it, let me know. Well these days. Okay, now I'm going to increase that. Feel that build up. Very good, very good. And when I'm feeling it, all right. So we're going to take that into our containment. First containment around ourselves. And containment containing the forum. Containing your space around you. And going to push that containment outward. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So, Ms. A, I guess we're going to start with this first question we have on our lineup.
Should I jump around or should I just go through the whole list one by one?
You can jump around.
Jump around. Yes. All right. So the first question is, sometimes during sessions there's like some types of density that are really intense, and people refer to them like as boss density. What makes them so-called strong?
Okay. Now the question is, how's it phrased?
Actually, I was wondering what makes a boss density strong.
A boss density strong. Well, it has to do with how it feeds. And generally, boss entities are those who get more essence out of people. And there's a hierarchy on that side. Even similar to, well, this realm emulates that realm. So every structure, every kind of, let's just say, hierarchical structure in this realm is literally an image of that hierarchical system on the other realm as well. So there are certain entities that are very good at getting essence out of the food, i.e. people. And through that, they get a certain position where they put over other entities who are the lower ranking feeders. So when the lower ranking feeders feed on the populace, include the chattel, they send that up through the so-called bosses. Bosses get their cut, which is more than what the little grunts get, and and then the bosses send it up to a higher, usually higher bosses. It's like a pyramid system. So this just means that they get a larger cut of essence, and they, with that amount of energy, they can do a little bit more. They can tend to be a bit more threatening to the food. And if you're someone with, well, what I do with containment is actually facilitating your ability to hang on to as much of your essence as possible. You have holes in your containment, which means you can contain, but there's certain things that you do that may open up doorways that allow you to be fed on, even inside of your containment. But even with containment, they get less, but with holes, they get more. So the thing is, with the boss, they can tend to be a bit more threatening, and their forms can be taken in the forms of entities consider themselves to be demons and so on and so forth, poltergeists moving things around and so on, those types of things. But if you are able to retain higher levels of energy, bosses are a threat to you. Also, if you're not afraid, so they can come in and they can frighten you. That's another way. Again, as you may know, just from some of the reviews that are done, like Monsters Inc. and so on and so forth, that where monsters come in, they scare someone, and then they fill up this scream tank, which is literally filling up their tank with essence, which means they drain your essence, and the more essence they drain, the weaker you are. So there are individuals who get handled by these types of entities, where you may see some videos, but stories for a long, long time of things unseen, pushing people. We've even seen some where some literally lift someone out of their bed and stuff like that, drag them off their bed. That just means that those people have lower essence, and the things that are pulling them have more essence than they have. And the only way they can get essence is basically by stealing it or convincing you through fear and so on and so forth to pump it out, or even through something like prayer. Praying to something, which means you're giving your essence away to something. So that's why I'm not into the whole prayer stuff and all of that. Because literally, if you're praying to something, something is taking that essence from you. Okay. So I think that anyone have any questions with that? Need any more clarity? Feel free. If not, we're just going to move on to the next one. Oh, well, yeah, there was something that I was discussing with Ms. A, that also the real has more power than any boss or any density in this realm. So the real has to do with this supreme consciousness universe. Those who are out there who are still connected to the supreme consciousness universe have a ton of essence. Unlimited access to pure essence. So the problem that density has with those who have come in is that they can't beat them. They can't scare them. They can't do anything to reduce their essence. Therefore, they're on the ropes right now. There's a lot of things that are going on that will show you if you open your eyes to it. And part of the system is doing these numbers like blocking certain channels on YouTube who are talking about weather and how extreme the weather is, because the food really, those who are really, I would say, programmed, believe that the humanoid, or people or certain groups have total power and control over this realm, when that's an illusion. And they're having a problem with, they can't figure out how to deal with the so-called weather anomalies and all of that. And not just weather anomalies, we're talking about volcanoes erupting, hundreds of earthquakes per day, from 2.0, 2-point earthquakes all the way up to 7.9 on the Richter scale. Some days there's upwards of 600 what they would consider earthquakes going on the planet at any given time. And this is more than they've ever experienced, and to the point where they were even, first they were trying to minimize stuff, and then you're hearing more like, we've never had this type of weather, we've never had this type of cold, we've never had this many earthquakes, we've never had, this many volcanoes erupting at the same time. Lightnings are very much involved in that. The whole cleansing with water, where there's floods after floods after floods after floods going on in various parts of the world. So that's just a sign of density not being able to, just say, take control over what's going on in the home. So again, the power of density is an illusion, and the only way they get their power is through you giving it to them. And in the system, the matrix is all about the matrix. Everything in the matrix, everything you see, everything you learn is from the matrix. None of it is real or the truth. If you want to find the truth, you have to learn how to look between the lines, and those are the things that I show you when we do the movie reviews, as well as when I do these points. Okay, so I think that's clear enough, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
So the next question is like, can the people band together and overthrow density?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of a pipe dream, because it's like believing in something from the Matrix, that there's this some kind of fantasy Disney movie, all these movies and everything. It's from density. It's all from density. And if everyone, which is the masses of the population, are programmed, they're programmed by density. So many people have no concept of what why they behave the way they behave, or that they're even programmed. That will never happen. Where these masses of the underlings will get together and overthrow the system and overthrow density, because so many of them are part of density. Their behavior is part of density. That's a fantasy. You can really tune in to, even if you just look at individual people and really pay attention to how individual people happen and behave, you just realize that nobody's on the same page, and there's a whole lot of selfishness. So if individuals want to be, that's another thing too. If everyone wants to be self-important, you're not going to have any unity. Then there's the underlings who have been trained not to think for themselves, that they have to have someone think for them. And generally, it's something that's part of the system. Whatever religious leaders, political leaders, and all these types of so-called leaders that are put into place by density. That's a pipe dream. That will never happen. So something outside, and it's something that a woman who's in her 90s, I think I might have mentioned this story some time ago on one of the forums, who I guess it was kismet that we ran into one another, but it was an older woman who's in her 90s who used to dance at the Cotton Club. So, she's long as transitioned out, because that meeting between me and this person was at least close to 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And we were at one of these new age type, parties, and we kind of gravitated to one another. And we said that, yeah, these folks are talking about this new age stuff or whatever. She said, but I think that the change is going to come from the outside. And I said, I've been thinking about that for a long time. And there was like, two minds got together. And we both like, yeah, because all this new age garbage has been going on for over hundreds of years, the enlightenment setup of something else to just really denigrate and just feed on those who are trying to recover from the war. But what do? It's in war, they moved it from there to here. And then those there said, well, every man for himself, literally. So with that type of thinking that goes on in the world goes back to this concept, can people get together? No, because the whole system is about divide and conquer. The whole system is about me. I want to be special. I want to be on top. And then the others beaten down to the point where, oh, I'm so lowly. I just need someone to tell me what to do. And then they look up to something that is part of the good system to tell them what to do, and they never get anywhere. So when you want to know what's fake, think about how long they've been doing certain things. Or I just put out a true logic about the word love. All of these words and all of these so-called intents and all these mantras, and then you turn around and everything is still in it. Tells you it doesn't work. None of this crap works. But to my own harm, I can actually give you some effects. I can shift your energy. I can make you feel, not so much make you, I actually open you up to clarity so that you feel better. Open your mind up to the point where you can actually try to glean more. A lot of folks, including clients, are still struggling with tunnel vision because it's trained into the world to not look at things in a holistic sense, but through a little hole, a little tube, or what I call linear. So with that said,
I'm just going to show the true logic for those who haven't seen it, just so if they go on social media, Neil Shamanic Founder Chief, they'll be able to find the exact quote you're talking about.
Okay.
I find the word love to be problematic since its use is amorphous, elusive, and often used to manipulate and deceive. Respect and consideration is straightforward and hard to misconstrue. I prefer the latter.
But they've introduced love so much, that they make songs about it, and so it's all set up. All you need is love. I love you. So, to say all you need is respect and consideration doesn't flow quite the same. So again, it's just been basically bamboozled and brainwashed into thinking that, and not even thinking where are you getting these words in anyway? Who's defining the meanings of them? And I've asked even on forums to define it. I don't think anyone ever really was able to clarify what the hell love means. But we did. Yeah, we did have hashtags to talk about the origins of it. You say you read those hashtags. Yeah.
Great. We spent a lot of time on them. So it's definitely worth. So the hashtags are love isn't damaging in reference to objects, situations, and activities, but in regards to people, it can be used in a manipulative, selfish, and deceptive way. The origins of the word love come from a word lubiati, meaning desires, libido, meaning desire, or libet, it is pleasing. Sounds like when you're saying the word love, it has a manipulative meaning. I desire something from you, or I want you to please me. For example, I'm hard on you because I love you. But really, they're ego tripping and trying to live their life through another.
Yeah. It's generally used to, again, repeating what Ms. So eloquently read. It is 9 times out of 10 used to manipulate. So, respect and consideration. My own personal experiences with that whole use of the word love is that I was in a situation, the person was being less than respectful, generally because that person had an ego issue, thought they were smarter than I, but I proved that I was smarter than them just by my actions, not by I was trying to prove anything. I went about my life in a much smarter way, and it's evolved better for me. So the ego causes a person to want to denigrate me, buy all kinds respect for me, and no consideration for how hard I worked. And what do they say at the end? But I love you. Love the screwy word, man. But again, for objects, yeah, I love my car, man. Because the car can't love you back. You know, hey, I love the countryside. You know, the countryside isn't going to say I love you back. I love ice cream. Ice cream's not going to say I love you back. Anything, you know, if you're lactose intolerant, you know, if ice cream could say I love you, it was lying. It's not good for those who are lactose intolerant. They love the taste of ice cream. You know, so yeah, you can use that for that. But when it comes to people, you know, where this usually has to do with manipulation. You know, only thing ice cream can do for you is go down your stomach and that's it. So anyway, yeah, we can move on to the next question unless anyone has something to add or any questions about it. But
so you were talking about common phrases that this system has promoted a lot, and another one is evolution. So someone asked a question: is evolution real? Did it ever happen in this realm? And they're asking because evolution is taught in school and is being pushed a lot. They were wondering how much truth there is to it, and did we really evolve from monkeys?
Again, this is the matrix. Schools are in the matrix. It's no truth. It's how they want you to interpret this realm. So if you decide to ask questions in school, or you decide to, okay, I have this class having to do with algebra, this class having to do with creative writing, and this class having to do with history and so on and so forth, but you kind of like find some interesting little parallels, and you try to ask the teacher, how can we these seem to connect in some ways. The teachers generally will say, no, we're talking about this box here, that box there, that box there, that box there. Of course, there's no such thing as evolution from a goddamn monkey. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Even when they were teaching that garbage when I was in school, I was like, well, okay, but when did the evolution stuff stop? How come monkeys aren't evolving as we speak? So what, millions and millions? It's garbage. Everything in the matrix, it's a lie. It's garbage. If you want to believe it, go and believe it. It's just going to be chasing your tail. You know why they do this? Because they are attacking your mind. That's how you keep you in what I call the chicken coop. By attacking your mind, filling you with nonsense. You're forced to go to schools in certain countries like the United States. There are other countries like here in Thailand. Not everybody can go to school because they have to pay for it, and if their parents don't have enough money, then they don't get that education unless someone is into home teaching, schooling their kids, and a lot of them have come through generations where they don't have what you call so-called formal education, which is more or less formal brainwash. But it is good to know how to read the language of the system, write the language of the system, and be able to, count as high up as you need to count. I've met people who didn't know how to count past 20. Yeah. So, anyway, with that, again, you're drinking the Kool-Aid. If you think any of this garbage that you learned in school has anything to do with your benefit, it's about keeping you locked down. So if you're a kid who thinks outside of the parameters of what they're teaching, and you ask questions outside the parameter, you tend to get punished. Because you're not walking the straight line that we want you to walk. I was one of those kids who didn't walk the straight line, and I had a hell of a time in school. I hated school, and you can never get me back to it. Well, other than language classes and so on and so forth, yeah, I did that stuff. But as far as like supposedly expanding my horizons and so on and so forth, or career horizons and so on, I found that it was easier for me to learn out in the field. find my own way of teaching myself certain things, and then getting guiding out there. And I learned a lot more. So I went to our college, and it was an intro into the field that it was very successful. But I didn't really know what the field was about until I got out of art school. Realized that it was even broader than I had realized or what they had taught me. But also, things are always, we want to talk about evolution, things do evolve as far as like how things have changed in this world. But it's not a situation where it evolves in a positive way. Some things evolve in a way where it becomes more complicated. You have to spend more time understanding whatever the field is that you're in, which is pretty good for the system because it keeps you preoccupied with trying to learn things that will keep the system going, that will support the system. So anyway, I think that's clear enough.
Do you want the rest of the question?
Sure.
Okay, so this person is talking about the abilities and powers that some individuals have. It feels like we took some steps back as humans.
Okay, again, that goes to the reality that this is an illusion. This is a hologram. So it's like looking at a video game and looking at that as reality. That there's a step backwards. The step backwards was being caught up in this nonsense. That's the step backwards. And I think part of that has to do with inventions and all this other kind of stuff.
I'll continue. So it says, who was the driving force of us? This person is talking about themselves as a part of the human race. Getting to where we are with technology and all the inventions was a density. How would we have evolved if density would not have interfered?
We wouldn't be here, that's for darn sure. We'll be out expressing ourselves in a true environment. As another, I don't know if you have that one, Candy, about the purpose of consciousness. One, you're not people, you're consciousness first. You want to hang on to the people thing, you're not going to get anywhere. And you might as well jump out of my movement. Your consciousness. If you want to hang on to the people thing again, you're fooling yourself. That's a label the system gave you to shut you down. Okay? You are consciousness. The universe is full of consciousness. This is an anomaly. And if you pay attention to what's going on now, it's very, very timely from things that I've talked about over the last couple of years. Things that I've said were coming about have been coming about. Things are letting you know that this is that the universe is expansive. If you want to say evolution, not in the sense of whatever his name was, who talked about monkeys and all this kind of nonsense. Evolve as a consciousness, as a unified consciousness, not as a me consciousness separate from everything else. Because you know what happens with me, the other ones want to be me's, keep with those me's, and nobody gets anywhere. And I think the me thing has to do with wanting to be important and looked up to. And the joke that yet again is played on those who are into themselves is that you will be forgotten. Because as it's set up, when you live a certain number of years, then you transition out, then you got to start over. So those who are left behind with their legacies of ancestors and so on and so forth, I don't know how many of you could even give me any details of what your great-great-grandparents were about. So let's say your great-great-great-grandmother and grandfather were all wanting to be known and eternally want to be really, really special, and you don't even remember who they are. If you're like that, the same thing is going to happen to you. You will be forgotten. So it's always best, as far as I'm concerned, to be part of the whole. Because things move, things evolve when you're part of the whole. It doesn't if you're singular and wanting to be more special than this consciousness over here or that consciousness over there. That is the result of damage from the system. As I call it, the Univian system.
Yes, I'm ready to.
Okay.
So this is the reference set here, just for those who want to look it up on social media. And it says, the purpose of consciousness is to expand, explore, experience, and express. Start the journey and let the beauty unfold in front of you.
So hashtag.
Oh, sure.
If you want.
No, of course. What is your purpose? To expand, explore, experience, and express the beautiful journey. Expression through embracing the unknown journey, and a journey void of fear. Experiencing the real, riding the crest of the universal expression, and catching the wave. Riding the waves of infinity, the journey is forever.
So the journey is not for self-important.
Yes, it might be on another
It
one.
might be on another one. Yeah. So if you're hell bent on wanting to be more special than anyone, you can't seem to get over that. Good luck.
That would be the one. In order this that you're referencing this particular post, in order to get to the wise man, you have to scale the mountain. It's not the other way around. It says the journey is not for the self-important. The road to enlightenment is long and arduous, and no one can carry you there. Wisdom is always in motion. The path to the wise man is determined by the wise man, and only the sincere can see the path. A voyage to true freedom.
Okay. But yeah, I didn't realize it was but they apply to both, though. That does apply to both. So with that said, what is the rest of this?
What is the rest of this question? So
Yeah, because I think with I think I answered that. The evolution of going backwards and so on and so forth. That's just being stuck in a concept that the density has fed you.
yes.
And if you're still looking up to this point, obviously it wasn't working. If you're still searching up to this point, it isn't working. The question is, do you feel like you're moving forward with what I'm doing or what I'm teaching? Or did you feel you were moving forward with, you didn't, you weren't, or you wouldn't be searching? So even if this isn't for you, keep on searching. Go ahead.
Another lie that's promoted is as if like the technology in this realm is actually evolving. When it's damaging dunya, how can it be a revolution?
Yeah, very good. Very good one. Again, there are those who say, well, if we didn't create cars, you wouldn't be able to drive around, from nowhere to nowhere faster. So what happens with cars, and they start talking, oh, there's pollution. Oh, yeah. And then there's, oil slicks. Well, there wasn't pollution or oil slicks before they started, supposedly creating and evolving into so-called better garbage. It's like you're being brainwashed if you think that any of these so-called inventions are improving anything. You don't need any of this stuff. They convince you that you need it. There are actually movies about where it's supposed to. I got my smartphone and I can. Ms. Orkoel used to go to Egypt quite a bit decades ago, and he interacted with these, Egyptian, and they weren't just like, special mystics or anything. These were folks who were, aware of their culture and so on and so forth, and the mysticism in their culture. They would get in touch with her, that she called by wireless phone, which was through psychic connection, and ask her, about certain things and so on and so forth. And she'd have to verify it by calling them and say, yeah, I was talking to you, and thanks for answering the question. There's a movie that I like, I may review at some point, called Fast Runner. That's to do with the Inuit people. And there's a point where there's a brother and sister, and they're both shaman. And they live away from the village in different areas. And there was a problem going on in the village with their family. And so I believe one of the elders got in touch through psychic means to one of those, the sister brother, I guess uncle and or whatever. And then that brother, he psychically got in touch with the sister. Then they devised a plan to deal with the density that was in the village. They didn't have to walk into the village or anything, or get on a plane or ride or get on their cell phone and call, whatever. They managed to devise this plan to deal with the density, and which they did. If anyone has any inkling or understanding, they'll know what they're looking at. I knew what I was looking at and what they were getting across. So anyone thinking that you need any of this stuff, you're fooling yourself. You know? Also, the whole invention of cars. Growing up, a lot of cars, a lot of people driving really fast, drunk driving, accidents, crashes, all this stuff. Well, they had accidents with horse and buggy too, but not on the level they have when they, having cars and going a lot more speed and all this other kind of stuff, and the commercials telling you that this is a great thing. You need this, or horny guys, so they have a pretty girl in a bathing suit next to a shiny red car. You need this. If you get this, you'll get the chicken red. They're constantly bombarded. They attack your mind all the time here and convince you that all this stuff is positive. Like you're going to be here for eternity and enjoying, so-called enjoying this stuff. Guess what? You're going to get what we call old and transition out. Then you're going to be pining for cars and things like that, on the other side. But there are actual people who transition out, and a part of their consciousness gets stuck to a car, gets stuck to a house, gets stuck to material stuff, gets stuck to locations. Because this system has locked everyone's consciousness into it. And I'm not going to go into much detail. I think that I've talked about it, that, this grid that has since been really, I should say, it's being dismantled, but maybe finally totally dismantled. I don't know, we're going to muscle test on that at some point, where actual consciousness can actually see what's really outside of this realm. And so many are so messed up that it's like, an example you use of an inmate who's someone who's been in the penitentiary for 30 years, yes. And then finally he's free and he's walking around and he can't figure out how to behave like someone who, which the concept of free isn't really free, just free from this box into another box, but a bigger box where people are walking around. They're not stuck in a penitentiary, but they're walking around in this prison. And he doesn't know how to handle being outside of this prison and in the bigger prison, or going into a grocery store. And I think you said that story had to do with someone that was in the culture.
In the Christian cult, they would target people who were previously inmates to become part of the church. And so I was able to observe firsthand those who were saying, like, just going through the cereal aisle was too many choices, because usually they didn't have much choices.
Or any choices.
Or any choices.
You eat what they gave you. You didn't have any choices. I believe you said something. It's almost like you had an anxiety attack because there were too many choices.
And sometimes they'll put themselves back into the prison.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit.
Just because of that.
Yeah. I think Shawshank Redemption, there was a bit where Morgan Freeman's character finally got out of prison, and he's working at bagging groceries at a grocery store. And the manager, tells him to do something. He goes, yes, boss, like that, yes, boss. And the manager's like, whoa, dude, especially because of the times, it wasn't back in Jim Crow days. So the white manager felt a little uncomfortable with this black dude going, yes, boss. But this is where his world was, where he had to say yes, boss, to all the prison guards. And he didn't really know how to deal with being out of that prison and into the bigger prison. So I think that, I feel like he's ending the point with that. Yeah, well, that is exactly what, I don't know if you said that a lot, but you can say it, you can say it again.
So it's like, just like in that example with the person who was imprisoned, and he had these like habits and behavior to where when he got out, he still had these habits of behavior, where everyone was always like, whoa, you know, it's a shocker. So the real that is coming is so different than what people experience here. And that's why people, you know, they think, oh, I can talk to the aliens. But usually when they're thinking of talking to the aliens, it's all about me.
Yeah, yeah. What about me? What about me? What's going to happen to me? Well, you know, how does it relate to me? You know, instead of observing, but there's so much damage that people don't know how not to just focus everything on themselves. So they're speaking a totally different language energetically from those who are in the real. So folks are like, I mean, there's some, is it okay?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, so there are those who, even after, I think it was actually kind of interesting. There was something you were looking at yesterday, and someone said, okay, now I think it had to do with accepting, yes, this, you know, these extraterrestrial crafts are here. All right, good enough, good. You're showing all these images. I get it, they're real. Now I need answers.
Yeah, I don't need proof.
I don't need proof. I need answers now. So he wants to know, you know, okay, what next? You know, what's happening? You know, the system, big time, that always knew that there were others. They were the ones piloting a lot of the freaking UFOs at that time. And then having people killed who said that, you know, there's these beings who are flying around in these ships. And if they said they saw a ship, this is like, you know, 20, 30 years, maybe even more recently, a couple of years ago. I mean, I had someone try to make fun of me 2 years ago when I mentioned it. And then last year when the government, the powers that be, said, okay, yeah, they're there. This nitwit decides he wants to apologize to me. And I'm like, I'm moving on later from you, loser. You can't believe that anything is possibly possible. You're going to miss that boat big time. And there's a lot of people, face it, who will miss that boat because they can't get over that hump. But then also they want to pull back because that person is supposed to be a family member. Can you say my family member? That's just another consciousness playing a role. You had other past lives, you've had other expressions, you've had different parents, you've had different siblings, or you were an only child or whatever. These are just individuals playing a role, just like you were playing a role as sister, daughter, son, or whatever. So the reality of the matter is that it was saying that this is a prison. The freedom is out there. And those from the free realm are the ones that you see the orbs and all these things moving around, or the crafts that are inside of the clouds that are dumping tons of water in certain areas. Try not to be a vermin, because those are the ones getting washed away. No understanding. The ones who are crying, oh, the Palma volcano is erupting. She's evil. But you sit in your house right on her. And she wants to stretch. So your house falls down. You're in the wrong place. Yes.
There's this new Hilda animation, and it's like that where there's this consciousness underneath the soil. But oh, she's such a great consciousness because she's just gonna let us sit on her and not move at all. Like that's great. I'm like, that's selfish. You're just inhibiting her expression just for your selfish ass to sit on her. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like it kind of goes to something. It's still along the vein of almost similar. It's like people who will call you a bad person because you don't do what they want you to do. But also, if you decide to do something that's beneficial for yourself, that doesn't hurt anyone else, you're a bad person because you're still not doing what I want you to do. So this world is full of selfish beings. They've been trained to be selfish. Reality of the matter is things change all the time. Always changing all the time. Density was pushing buttons, and things would collapse on a ton of people. They don't care. But if something light comes, shouldn't you care about humanity and all this stuff? And those from the outside were like, I'm sorry, but you've been turned into something like a virus. And you're depleting a consciousness. Either get on the other side of things to benefit that consciousness energetically, or you're going to get run over. Viruses aren't really consciousness. Collection of consciousness. You know? So let's say yourself, you're being eaten up by parasites. You take something to try to get rid of the parasites. Good, right? Get rid of the parasites, get rid of the worms or whatever you may be suffering from. But then have a hard time looking at yourself as one of those to another consciousness. And we were looking at something where it's like the multitude of consciousness in its various forms, all the way down to looking at I call it an atomic microscope, but they have another name for it.
Yes, I do. I believe it might be an atomic microscope.
But the name that I know it as is atomic microscope, and and they have some where they look at what's on your skin. You look with your naked eye, and you don't really see it. Sometimes you feel a little itch somewhere if you can't see anything, but actually it's something that's actually there.
Electron microscope images.
Electron microscope images.
I have them if you're.
Well, you can show them one, I guess.
Show them one? Okay.
Yeah. But these are things that you can see with your, with your naked eye. But they're moving around. They are consciousness. Yeah, you can show them one of the creepy ones.
Okay.
Not to make it where you can't sleep at night. It's just reality.
It's like showing them that people like to think of this realm as New Age defines it or fantasy defines it as it's all what is it, living light? But well, this world is infested with density, down to the smallest, to the smallest atom.
Yeah, it's the smallest atom.
So there's things that look like this, a tapeworm. It's an entity, just like the entities that we've shown you before in the Spirited Away movie review. Entities like what they call skinwalkers or Slender Man. It goes right down to the tiniest types of density, roaming about and gathering essence.
And this isn't just recent. The first time I actually saw, and they were calling it, thinking atomic microscope at the time.
Oh, okay.
But it's electron microscope.
That's what this guy.
Yeah, well, names change.
Mm-hmm.
But at least 40 years ago was when I first started seeing images like that. And, at that time, it was, whoa, that's pretty deep. And it didn't have me think about, what was on my skin, those are the ones that are more recent, but there are ones where they have these things like near hair follicles that look like trees because, the electron microscope blows things up to such a degree that it looks like trees, that your hair follicles looks like trees. And then there's this little thing that's not, like a tick or a flea or anything. They're minuscule in comparison to a flea. So as you really look at how consciousness is in the universe, you can end up being a parasite or something beneficial. And most people are parasites and trained to be parasites. That's what the school is about. That's what institutions are about. Train you to support the parasitic behavior of the plant. To tell you that creating jet planes are a positive when they do all this fuel and pollute the air. And one of the reports that came out with this corona bit was that when a lot of flights were grounded, that the air quality got better. So anyway, with that said, I don't know if there's anything else I can add to that. If anyone have any questions, just feel free, and when you get a break, when I break, ask your question.
To you?
Yes.
It's
Jessica, I have a question. I knew someone who had a growth removed from their stomach, and they mentioned that it had teeth and hair. Is that super common?
I've heard that before, and I think they used to say, now was it male or female?
Female.
Female, because there are females who will have some kind of weird growth in there, and yes, I've read about that over, to tell you the truth, over the last 50 years, that there are individuals who have teeth, yeah, and hair like a ball, and this flesh, and so on and so forth. Those are anomalies, and those are literally, I would say, very parasitic. So you could be like an attachment, but it's actually a mass. And there have been individuals who've had, it's akin to a tumor, but the difference is, like you said, it has teeth and hair.
Thank you.
And whenever you're talking, you made a very cool True Logic sheet that looks like this, and it says, the universe is the body and we are its cells. Either we contribute to its well-being or become the cancer bent on its destruction. And you're talking about how cancer, multiplies, and it does things that are totally not beneficial to the entire whole of your body.
Yeah, and to show that it is consciousness itself, and I would say, like everything, we are our avatars are a collection of consciousness. Every cell is a consciousness. So it's like, in the mind that way, because the system tells you that you have to be like a full body to be a consciousness, then everything is consciousness. There is like a agreed upon program that will make a certain number of cells create a hand, or create, your torso, create the organs in the body, which is not unlike going to a motor factory and putting an engine together. It's just, this is more what you consider to be organic. But I actually moved off of that. Now, what was that again?
Is it just talking about how this realm is a cancer?
Yeah, it is cancer. And then again, as I was saying, consciousness, what I was going to say that I had a sibling who transitioned out a couple of years ago, and one of my other siblings didn't tell me what was going on, would go and do some work on her, and the doctors would say something like, "Oh, the cancer's not behaving like they would expect the cancer to behave," because she was interfering with it, with her form of energy work. So it would start to move away from that area so that it can continue feed and tax that consciousness and tax that avatar. So again, there are individuals who've had fibrosis, which again, I don't pay much attention to the names of things. I just see if it's a problem, it's an imbalance, and it's a consciousness. And they were running around for maybe 8-9 years, unsuccessfully, to doctors and hospitals and so on and so forth. And they came to me and I said, "Oh, this is an attachment." But no. The medical association that we told are the gods of healing. So said it's this, but they're so desperate to survive, they're going to try anything. So they tried some other people, and then they ended up in my studio. And they were expecting me to be something like, I don't know, some healer guy who's, I don't know, wearing grass skirt and beads around his neck or some kind of shit. I'm not any of those things. That's why I had to give it the name neo-shamanism. They said, "Yeah, he's a shaman, right?" You forgot the neo. No, shaman, right? I know somebody, but why don't you go to that person and have them fix it? But anyway, person comes in, running around with this fibrosis stuff. And it's a long story. There was some other individual who sent this individual who had an ego issue. I told the person not to tell me what the results of their visit would be. Tell them. So first, she had a session, and I didn't realize she had a neck issue, but I'm doing a whole balancing of energy and so on and so forth. She goes to them, tells them, I couldn't move my neck that much. But after the session, I got full use, radio use of my neck. They didn't tell me this. So she starts to purge from the fibrosis. Black blood coming out. Freaks out, calls him, doesn't call me. Then eventually runs to the hospital. And ends up with them, 12 bags of plasma or something like that. 12 bags of blood. She kept saying 12 bags of blood, 12 bags of blood. She was there for several days, and they couldn't quite figure out what was going on. And they said, well, okay, we're going to cut. We're going to do this operation. Not really knowing. Then they changed their mind, and they said, oh, we're going to do this operation. And it ended up, we're going to cut something out of you. And so eventually, I think he was afraid that she was going to die on his watch. So he pays for her to come back to me. And she tells me the symptoms. I said, you were just purging. Why didn't you get in touch with me? Well, he told me to talk to him. Well, doing that could kill you. So I have one session, finish up session. And Ms. A was there. This person, was he throw up for about an hour? They had a trash basket in front of her, and she threw up something seemed like an hour. Just hurling chunks. Then after that, the next day, right as rain. Everything's consciousness. Not everybody or anybody really can do exactly what I do. That's someone that I trained who's not bad, but nobody can do what I do because I communicate with the fiction, with the consciousness. And I'm very brutal about things that are creating imbalance. And I'm very vicious about removing these things. So anyway, I'm not sure exactly where I started with that.
You have a true logic that says, I commit myself to destroy the destroyers of light, the destroyers of balance, the destroyers of beauty. Once done, I need not destroy ever again.
Yeah, that's another thing that that the system likes to tell you. If you start to be, vicious back, you're going to stay vicious. That's bullshit. I don't like fighting things. I don't like warring. But this is a necessity. So I deal with it, and I know how I am. I know it's like they try to tell you that you don't know yourself. That's another thing with the schools, in the system. You don't know yourself. How do you know yourself? That's what religion does too. You don't know yourself. You can't be positive in your own recovery. You can't, contribute to your own recovery. So a lot of folks say, okay, doc, just, they just lay there like a beach whale. Just cut on me tell me when it's over. So, yeah, I know myself. I know that once I'm finished with something, I'm finished with it. It's just like a project. When I work on a project that needs to be dealt with, a problem that needs to be dealt with, it's like once I dig a hole to put something in there, I don't feel like I gotta dig more holes with nothing else to put in there. Because all of a sudden, I've got the urge to dig. I gotta taste the blood. I gotta kill more. That's density, that's their crap. I commit myself to all those things, exactly. When it's done, it's done. Because there's a lot better things to do in this universe than sit around fighting with a bunch of damaged consciousness. I would prefer not to have to do that. But I'm here to do that. But anyway, Ms. A, we can move on to the next.
Okay. Would you like to do waist beads, Chief?
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, someone was talking about waist beads. And we're trying to find some viable information on the Google.
That's time.
Time for Google is Googling. And there was one thing it started in Egypt.
Yes.
As a class, expression of class or something,
yes.
social status. Then there was ones that said started in Africa. And said this doesn't sound right. Because when I first had someone come into my studio a few years back wearing the waist beads, first thing I thought of is incarceration. And so decided to, if you want, we can actually do a demonstration with the muscle testing, which those of you who've ever been in the studio, you know how it works, and that it's very accurate. And we can ask some questions. Okay, I'm going to do protection, which is always important. There's anyone who's empathing, before you empath anything, you always have to protect yourself. Once you have to contain. And the levels that I work on, I have to do more than contain. So again, don't try this at home. So. That's them. Just for this question.
They said that it's become a trend, so I guess the system has been pushing it recently.
People adopt trends that aren't good for them. So, what I finally got is what I actually picked up when the person came in to the studio. And sleep. Sleep. Okay. So it was actually something that had to do with enslavement of women. And yes, when it goes down, yes. Enslavement of women, yes. So I would say that it more or less started in Persia, then spread to Rome.
Oh.
So when they would invade certain countries and so on and so forth, they would inevitably take slaves.
Oh.
And generally it's women that you see with these whiskeys. So what I saw was young girls all the way up, they call nubile women that they still felt, the desire to have intercourse with. It would be, and it wasn't beads, it was a chain around the waist. And that just meant that they were enslaved. It would be a longer chain connected to it that would be locked onto something, and they only had so much mobility. So it's a symbol of enslavement and incarceration. And because people are very, very lazy about trends, they don't know that the system fed this to also mentally get you to accept your enslavement. So I would say, oh, they all heard stuff. See, and powered up. Now I'm going to ask if I need to go any further with that. Okay. If anyone has any questions about it, I know that the question came from someone who was curious about it. It's pretty much through with that. If you want to have you sit up, I'm going to say sit up, see, open up something, see if she's empathing anything more, see how heavy you may be, and it sounds like you got something that I need to deal with. Okay. Yeah, heavy. Now, someone told me that a certain individual told them that it had to do with weight loss. And I guess they consider supposed to gauge how much, how big your stomach gets or something like that, and whether your diet is working. And it was reason that first, when I said that, the individuals who said it was for weight loss would come back and they'd end up being fatter. So.
They always give you excuses of why you should adopt poison.
Or anything that goes against your best interest.
Cheese, pizza.
Yeah, so literally, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question about the waist piece. Because it's from density, so like the people who actually apply it and are feeding people these lies of like what their beliefs of like the origin is from, they're feeding something bigger, or they're just feeding themselves?
They're feeding something bigger.
Okay.
They're feeding something bigger.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think someone was asking about how the atmosphere of the energy in the atmosphere or something like that. I think I talked about that the atmosphere is very, very toxic. It's literally, I don't know if you've ever seen any of these alien, alien threat movies or whatever, that they're terraforming the Earth and they're changing the atmosphere to suit them.
Pacific Rim is like that.
Yeah, Pacific Rim, which literally is just telling you what density did when they hijacked the entire Earth. They changed the atmosphere to suit their food and to suit them so that they can move around, be freely within it. So yes, it's literally, if it's feeding anything, the hierarchy usually gets the most. But what's going on, there's a lot of chaos going on. So it's like, it's a free-for-all going on out there. As far as like density, it's like, roaming, used to be roaming bands of density when things got really, really intense. Certain hierarchical density you could actually see on some of these YouTube channels. Folks don't know what they're looking at because they have a certain list of what these things are on the other side, because density is prepared for certain things. So if folks start to say, there are things on the other side, there are things showing up in my house all of a sudden and so on, and then they give you a list of names for them. But it doesn't cover what they really are. But again, that aside, I measure things by how they vibrate. So if it vibrates below a certain, below the line of demarcation, they're dense. I don't care. I don't care what the name is, what the title, what they do, and all this other stuff, what they look like. They're all dense. And it makes it easier. So when they categorize things, it's actually to just slow you down. Compartmentalize this, compartmentalize that. Let's save the whales, let's save the spotted owl, let's save the, this, let's save that. Compartmentalizing these different things. If these things are having trouble, they have to do with something holistic. It's about a full imbalance. And so they heavily focus on these little things, but not the things, the puppet masters that are creating these particular efficiencies in the universe. But this part of the universe, it's not spread, fortunately. This is very, like I said, a pimple on the butt of the universe. That's being popped. So, anyway, what is it to say? You can speak up.
You were talking about how density, they like to laud themselves as demons or super powerful or whatever, but they had to terraform Dunya so that they could survive, because they can't handle the universal rays of energy. If the real came in, they lose their breath, they can't survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's why on the last healing circle with tea, they were like losing their breath because the energy was higher than they could deal to bring into themselves.
Yeah. So, to tell you the truth, the reason why it is good to do the work that I am teaching and contain, because they can't handle a certain amount of light energy. Now, I've talked about enslaved energy, which means it's contaminated energy, and they can consume that. What I put in is pure energy. If thinks I'm angry, arrogant or whatever, I don't care. Talk to my folks who feel better when I put that energy So that's why it's important to your containment. Also important for you to be honest with the holes that you are creating in yourself that may have to do with insecurity. Because insecurity opens up a hole, and then things start to consume that energy. So the levels will start to rise, and then they'll go down a bit. But the more you have the sessions, that's why folks, even when they have holes, they feel better because it's harder for them to tap you out like that. And I'm pushing a certain type of energy into you. And anyone who thinks that they can get hold of this themselves, you're joking. You're fooling yourself. There has to be a certain source that can handle this type of energy. That's why I can do it. And you're on the other side of the planet, countries, and you're all because this is pure energy. I can feel it between us together right now. This is pure energy. Density has a hard time surviving in pure energy. So you'll find that they're trying to scare it out of you. I don't think anyone's actually been manhandled by density. You can tell me if I'm wrong. If any of you have been manhandled by density, let me know. But generally, it has to do with a threatening type of behavior. Try to get you to release some of that energy, or at least a lot of it, actually. So that they can feed on it and then hopefully reset up the shop. But my clients who have regular sessions, and mean regular within, every month, some do every week, some every other month. I wouldn't subscribe anyone to go longer than a couple months without a session, especially in the beginning, especially even in the middle of it, because there's so many ways that they can drill their way into the psyche with material ideas, with senses of feeling insecure, or there's numerous ways. Stress, and so on. So if you're dealing with any of these things, it's good to have sessions. And it's also just very good to do containment on the regular. It'll slow that stuff down. So even when you do have a session, you're not going to be tapped out or bottomed out before you get to it.
Speaking of containment, we have a question about containment, and it says, is it okay to contain for other people without them knowing, or should I only focus on containing myself and whatever is focusing on me?
Well, if you're containing benefit someone, I used to say you can contain the kid or whatever, but I changed my approach on that. If you're trying to contain someone without them knowing, it's not going to work because those people have holes. So it's like pouring water through a sieve. They have to be aware that containment works. They have to accept the concept of it, at least try to accept the concept of it. So there are a lot of folks. I'm trying to save Granny, but Granny is a staunch religious person who only believes that some sky being is going to save her, even though she's dwindling and drying up like a pretzel. So again, no, it doesn't work. I've had others who want to contain a guy, or want me to clear some guy without him knowing. Again, I can clear you can contain, but if you open up, I tell you to close all the doors, batten all the hatches, and you open up the hatches, guess what? You're going to get toxic again. These people don't even know that there are hatches to close. So it's again, just pouring it down the drain or pouring energy through a sieve. It's not going to work. They have to be aware. You can't trick people into being balanced. You're just fooling yourself. And wasting your time. That's good.
Did you want to say this?
No.
Talking about also holes, like if people eat other people's food,
Right.
and then people look at things. You're talking about this realm is like a spell that everyone is under.
Yeah. even talk about spells, in certain books that people consider to be benign, certain little rhymes and certain little songs that most people would consider to be benign, be chock full of spells. What's one? I think we showed the one with the Bernstein Bears. And it's just kind of interesting because there's certain clients and some of these things kind of crisscross one another who had certain types of trauma when they were a kid. And the perpetrator of the trauma would sing a certain song to them. They don't even know each other by name. It'd be totally on various different sides of the world, but using the same techniques. Or the Bernstein Bears. And do you have that one? Yeah. Ms. A can show you that, where there's this real confusion about the spelling of the Bernstein Bears. And this, we saw this after I got that, oh, wow, this is yet another spell book amongst a bunch of different spell books that are out there. Or even when we talked about the review of Cinderella, and that is steeped in witchcraft. And just obviously steeped in witchcraft. Some of the lyrics of the songs were just about spells and things like that. But anyway, let me know when you have it. Still loaded. But we can, while it's loaded, we can move on and then come back when it loads.
Okay. Actually, it just loaded as soon as you were talking about it.
Okay.
I can find the part, and if it's not clear, I can always add the video to the Neo-Shamanic Perspective page on the website.
Yeah, that's one other way to see it too. But I think it's kind of cool to actually see it, get a glimpse of it during the forum.
Yes, Chief. I've got it right here.
Okay.
So let's see.
So it has to do, just to set it up, it has to do with this guy who, he's in his childhood bedroom or something, or his bedroom.
Yes, his bedroom.
And he has a book from when he was a kid, Bernstein Bears.
Yes. And what's interesting is that when something is up with his room, whenever he goes into his room, the spelling changes, and he literally shows it on the screen really well, and it looks very cool. So I'll try to show you guys.
Entire subreddit dedicated to this so-called mismemory. Well, this next clip takes this phenomenon to the next level. The video was uploaded to TikTok by Agent Zero, but the original source is unknown. Take a look as the camera holder explains his memories about the Berenstain Bears.
So, I had this book, again, it's my nephew's, but I had this book in my closet when I came over, and I came back to that, and I went out there to see that, and I dug it out, and I noticed that the Berenstain had said Berenstain in that room. When I come out here into just a normal other part of the house, and it says this. So, just so you know, I'm not crazy. I'm going to show you the past of this doorway. What happens?
Then watch what happens when he enters the bedroom.
Alright, it happens when it gets in the room. See it? And then back out here. Yeah.
The name on the front of the book clearly changes.
And then normal. This creeps me out, man. I don't even like to be in this room anymore. Next time in here. Look at that.
At the end of the clip, he holds the book up more closely to the camera, and yet again, we can clearly see the name change as he enters the room. So how could so many of us have the same?
Okay.
So whenever he's outside of his bedroom, it says AIN, Berenstain, or however they pronounce it. And then when he goes into the bedroom, it switches to EIN. So it's quite interesting looking.
Yeah, I think that you were looking at something online where there was this confusion about the spelling.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so it depends on where the person is. His room has a vortex. So So which means that things coming in and out, and probably was feeding on him ever since he was a little kid. But again, it's like there are individuals who have had certain dreams or whatever where they see writing and it may be in English, and then it changes into an unknown language. And some have had lucid dreams where the same thing kind of happened. And I remember when I was quite young, in my early 20s, late teens, I recall having a series of dreams similar to that, where there's writing and I'm looking to see what the writing is, and then it's, it shifts into an unknown language that I couldn't read. So anyway.
Want to listen to us anything about that?
If you any questions? Anyone wants us to muscle test on having to do with that, or about what is glitch? Yeah, we could say there's a lot of glitches going on, and I could say that probably has to do with the climbing of dimensions. So you can get them on the table. You can address that, and just for just a backup.
I remember those books a lot as a kid, and that they had them. I couldn't even remember how it was spelled, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I never had them, and I never bought them for my kids. So saying, is it a glitch in the matrix? You say yes. Room has a vortex. Well, we can say, the question is, are the books satanic? Yeah.
Done, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, and there are a number of other books. If you want to submit a list of books, the children's books, that you want to know whether they are satanic or not, I'd be willing to check. And if they don't like NSTHA.
You know what stood out to me the most from that book? That all the bears had really long, sharp, curved nails. The claws.
Claws.
Yeah. That was
Okay,
weird.
you want to know?
Oh no, I
Okay, it's just an observation. Okay.
Sorry.
So with that, unless there's something else that I may be missing as far as a question having to do with that, because we've had this discussion some weeks ago when we first came across this video. But anyway, if anyone is interested in any of the children's books to find out whether they're programming books that literally are designed to open up a person to the other side, to being fed on. So a lot of spell books, a lot of so-called prayers, so on and so forth, is about opening a person. Again, this is a matrix. Everything created in the matrix is created to support the matrix. So again, I can't repeat it enough. If you think anything that you're looking at, or anything you learned in school or college, and in church or whatever, is here to support you, it isn't. Everything is to support the matrix.
But speaking of that, Chief, there's a question here that says when they grew up, when they would be at like parties with folks, they would hear chanting going on. It was like the roof is on fire. We don't need no water. Let the shit burn. And they would feel themselves start to chant as well. Are all the chants that we hear in this realm a way for density to open people up and feed on them?
Well, okay, all chants are. Okay. Well, let's see. I hadn't really asked whether all chants. And they're having a. Hey! Really? See? You can tell, I guess there's something to that. All right. Hey. This process keeps Ms. A from being uncomfortable. So it's a quicker way for me to shut them down. So squirming, so such discomfort on the table. So there's still something going on. Sleep. And wait a second. And come.
Yes. They reference even
Hard on.
sports events as well, chanting.
Okay. So when you find that they're still doing this, that means there's a flood, which is cool. That means I get more.
Shit.
Come on. Come on.
I don't know why, but they chant with mine like this.
They're always checking mine.
Like each chant feeds different groups of density. That is what they say.
Hey! Remove. Okay. So, chance, or is it?
Are all chants that appear in this realm open people up and feed on them?
Okay, so chance as a means to open the chanters up to being fed. I got it. I got it. Okay, so yeah, then I could tell before I even did this, then they start to empath them, and they start to just, anything they can do to try to stop it. They're just totally frustrated because they used to have, just total reign of the situation, and they just can't believe that someone's getting beyond their stuff. And they're just stupid also. I mean, their realm is pretty well decimated at this point. But they're programmed, and they're like a lot of people who are programmed who will never get it. So again, don't worry so much about what other people are doing out there. Concern yourself with yourself. Or if you're that bugged by it, stop doing the sessions and go out and join them.
Isn't it true, Chief, that different chants feed different groups?
Different chants feed different groups. Yeah, yes. See? Riddle. Hard out. If you want to read while you're laying on your back, that's fine too.
They used to in the past to not have to manhandle to get essence, but these days it's hard.
It depended on, with exorcism, it's about manhandling. It's about getting essence from those who are observing the person who's possessed. So they're saying that they used to not have to manhandle, but they've been manhandling all along. But it's going down kind of slow. Been manhandling the food all along. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But she's picking up and lying. That's what's going on. I can read through the line. So I'm just most of the tests until you can see the proof that I know when they're lying, as well as I know when clients are lying. So, and usually they're lying for the density, hiding in there. For instance, power down. Me? Okay. So yeah.
So in terms of entities, are doppelgangers real? If so, what are they? Are they a ghostly double, or a shapeshifter, or what?
And did everyone hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So about doppelgangers, are doppelgangers real? Doppelgangers real? You gotta know. Now, let's see. There's a couple of terms for like fragmented consciousness, real.
Oh,
Yes. So doppelgangers would be considered fragmented consciousness. Well, they said sometimes a fragmented consciousness, yeah. Sometimes a shapeshifter. So, okay, next. Literally, again, there. This realm is about boxes. So, the doppelganger is another box. A fragmented consciousness, another box. Clones, another box, and so on. So again, in the end, but we're doing it because people are curious. But in the end, I've had so much experience dealing with all this nonsense that I just chalk it up to: are you dense? How dense are you? So if you're dense, you're below this line, I deal with you like everything that's below this line. I don't care if you're close to this. If you're up, this means more light going up. Going down, more dense. Denser, the lower you go, the denser. I don't care. I'll go all the way to the bottom and hit them just as hard as I hit the ones that are here. So anyway.
The next one is, in the real, consciousness can travel around without their body. If your body is in space, will it explode?
Okay. That's not true. But again, if you are in the real, you don't have this hologram. The hologram is a program. And just like a video game, they can program the avatar of a certain thing to be affected by certain things. It's like you have certain, I don't know, Dungeons and Dragons or Warcraft or something, where there are certain avatars who can withstand a certain type of attack, and then there are other ones who can't or who are weak, and so on and so forth. This is literally a program. And again, it has to do with them talking about space travel, which is like a pipe dream. Never really travel to to distant planets and so on and so forth. It's just really just to jerk people around with stuff that will never happen. Because they know this is wrong. If they go beyond their barrier out there, then you're in the real. And when you're in the real, when they're in the real, they're in trouble. So they have no plans of just, like these sci-fi movies where they're traveling to some black hole some way out there and so on and so forth, or Star Trek and some of these other, space movies where there's Klingons out there and there's these, but they did control a certain amount of area. I have to admit that. And there are different types of entities or in those areas that they made it, pretty much like a Borg, if anyone remembers, but that series from, I believe it was a Star Trek series, one of the Star Trek series. So they traveled very much like the Borg in assimilating everything along the way. And, and their Lord was, the end. They were doing it for that selfish piece of crap. And very, very sick and damaged. So, all this stuff, I think it's just to, reach essence. I would say all the stories about, blood vessels bursting out of this. This is just to feed essence. I have muscle tests on this first. So it's to feed essence with that, those types of stories.
Yes, because LiveScience.com says an astronaut floating without a suit in space wouldn't survive, and their demise would happen within minutes, not within seconds. It would be a gnarly exit with boiling bodily fluids and nearly frozen nose and mouth. It sounds like a fairy tale that people tell to scare kids.
Well, I mean, Grimm fairy tales was from a culture where they didn't have the edited books. They said those storytellers are horrific. So they would tell little children these stories and then put them to bed. Be fed up. So the true that Grimm story tales are very, very horrific books? Yes. Just like this particular person told me years ago. So we had Grimm story tales, but they weren't, the ones where, kids were getting eaten and dismembered and whatever else was going on. Everything, again, this is support the matrix. All the books you read, I don't care how hard it is for you to accept it, or just put your head in the sand. There you go. Sleep. Yeah, they don't like the truth. Sleep. Sleep. See? So, now what else?
They would. So it's just more fairy tales, that you find online in the disguise of science, because it says, according to Richard Harding's book Survival in Space, the blood vessels can withstand the internal pressure without explosions. Humans do die if left in outer space without a spacesuit. So there's those who contradict. They play both
Yeah,
sides.
they're contradicting themselves. So which, scientists you're supposed to believe?
No.
Hey, and they work it up. So again, they can't even agree on what's going to happen. And what's your chances of actually getting in the spaceship and flying around out in space anyway? Why are you even wondering about that?
Being gullible has its side effects.
Yeah. Well, anyway, but it's I don't know if there's anything else you want to
Not that
get
I
out
know,
of this.
but it's just like sometimes people, if the wording sounds very eloquent, or if the wording sounds, the words are long, people think it's true. That's not.
Yeah. Well, again, this stuff, it feeds into one of the favorite tools of Vincent, fear. I'm gonna have to make sleep. Yeah. Sleep. So, why write this stuff? You read it and go, oh my goodness. And the chances of you going out in outer space is slim to none. So you're worrying about, exploding blood vessels and so on and so forth. And the guy's saying, it won't be over fast. It'll be like minutes. And you'll feel like, it's all about eating, really. Again, the way the system has it set up with these avatars, there's kind of like a time limit as to how long these avatars are supposed to last. Some people manage to override it and last a lot longer than the system wants them to last. But inevitably, the way it's set up, it eventually crash. Which means you're going to transition out anyway at some point if this system continues the way that it's continuing, that it's going. So why are you afraid of dying when you're going to die anyways? It's illogical. Fear is extremely illogical. And it's a real tough one. There's times that you think, you don't know why you're afraid, but you may be empathing something that's empathing someone else's fear. Or empathing, with me, I empath the fear of density. And when I first started to experience it, I said, I know that I'm not afraid of this. But why do I feel fear? And then I go, empathing. Oh, it's their fear. And once I got a handle on that, guess what? It just started to just fade away. But fear is a tool of feeding. Fear of everything. Fear, and then it's interlaced with everything. Stress, roots of fear. You're stressed about something. You're stressed that you won't succeed at something. You're stressed that you might lose your job or something. You're stressed because you went to the doctor and he says you have an incurable disease. Start feeding all that essence out there. People who've had incurable diseases who decided, you know what? Okay, that's what it's going to be. I'm going to watch comedies, and I might have mentioned this some time ago on one of the forums, and they just start watching comedies, and every day I'm going to laugh till I die. And then all of a sudden, the time that they're supposed to die goes by, and doctor checks to see if it's cancer, how it's doing, and they can't find it anymore. Because laughter and humor heals. Regardless as to whether this guy knew what he was doing. He just wanted to, I'll be damned, I'm just going to sit here and just, cry myself to sleep every day or whatever. I'm just going to go out laughing. But not everybody buys into it the way that the system wants them to buy into it. That's another thing that's a fallacy. That the system that scientists, that humanity knows everything and can control everything on the planet. That's a bunch of nonsense. How can they know everything when they've never been anywhere? If scientists don't know it, then it doesn't exist. Something that came up recently is about the oceans around the planet. I might have mentioned this one again, but repetition is good because we get monitored all the time by density. So they're talking about what's going on under the ocean and so on and so forth. And they had to start admitting, and I don't know why, that they said that only 5% of the oceans on this planet have been explored. I mean, 95% have not been explored, and you don't know what's under those waters. Every so often, something weird washes up on shore. They can't figure out what the hell it is. So anyone wants to buy into the science thing, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I can figure. So anyway.
Chief, I have a question. This is Sire.
Okay.
It's about the Berenstein Bear books. It brought up memories whenever my abuser was getting ready to abuse me.
Oh, they're trying to break you up. Hold on a second. Okay, try it again. Your feed broke up and it just ended with a garble.
Okay,
You said you said something about the family units in the Berenstein books.
Yeah, as a kid, before my abuser at the time would abuse me, they would make me read the Berenstein Bear books.
Whoa, you hit enough. Sleep. Sleep. They don't like being outed. That's another thing. They're cowards. They hide under the darkness. They hide, let's say under the this screen where you can't see them. They're walking around you. Rounds are coming down. So when I get information, when someone throws out some truthful information that exposes them, sleep. They're all upset and they show up in a nice little mass. Yeah, cry. Power down. When I say power down, that has to do with those consciousness that are literally mechanized, like android types. Not like the movies that you see, but they're mechanized. They run programs. There's so many people out there that you walk into, that you rub shoulders with, that are literal robots. That's why you can't seem to get through to them, because they run a program that won't allow them to get off of that mechanized track. So hold on a second. We'll get back to your question. I have to deal with these guys real quick. And Sire is one of the extreme spheres, and the empathing, when you hear coughing, that has to do with the things that are around, and she's empathing them getting cold. Come up.
Thank you, Chief.
Before they would laugh, it was really a snarky laugh. Now they laugh out of fear.
About what the book is or does.
Yeah, they don't want anyone to actually see that they've been sleep.
Their children.
Yeah, but they've been giving the children cursed books. Also, how the wording is set up, the acting program. Program the reader and the listener, primarily the listeners, who usually kids. Okay. I think we can go ahead. So you were saying that before the abusers would abuse you, they would have to read that book.
Yeah, and the energy from the book would be very dense, and the characters would start to look more evil. How Miss A pointed out the sharp claws and like their sharp faces. So with that happening, I was wondering, the book opens up whoever's reading it, allowing density a better chance of feeding, like a higher feeding.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, everything here is for density is about feeding, and it's not like I'm saying something that's unusual and unheard of. There are folks who talk about even just some stories about things that feed on energy, and some of these called succubuses or sirens and so on, who will attack an individual, or even the Kishi from Africa will attack people, and they feed on their energy. It's very, very, very real. So yeah, and sometimes, and even in the situation that we're talking about, we can say it's satanic because they're feeding something. It's like putting their kids up as a sacrifice. So there are parental units who are involved in very dense arts and magic, or Satanism or whatever, who are literally feeding their masters. And in turn, for feeding their masters, they get favors. The thing is that master decides whether he wants to give you the favor or not, or he may change the rule on them, the rules on them halfway through. Yeah, I wanted 2 kids, but I want 4 now. But you said 2. What are you gonna do? Give me 4. So these individuals who are doing this type of stuff, they're actually offering up the children. A lot of them offer themselves up, but they like the essence of children. So there's something about children that density likes, because that energy is less contaminated than those who reach puberty. So, yes.
And what Sire saw.
Okay, hold a second. See,
What Sire saw is what that book really looks like.
So what you saw is what the book really looks like, and we call it Glamour Down. Yeah, I mean, well, I recall that one of the things I noticed when I did see the book, and even when they had the Berenstein Bear, I think they had like TV programs or something like that. I can't remember for sure, or Berenstein Bear movie or something that they had the fame. I don't know if they all had the same thing, but I do recall the things, which I thought, when I see regular bears, and I lived out in rural areas and had black bears around there, I never saw a bear, and we had plenty of them come through the property with that, that thing. Now you're gonna punish me, idiots. How about this? It's one of these things where they like, we're gonna punish you, and as you get rid of them, my big brother's gonna punish you. And where is he? So they're just a bunch of nippleheads anyway. So anything else you wanted to add to them? But thank you for sharing that though. But is there anything you want to do? Go ahead.
Yes, also too, like excuse me, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, or the cow jumped over the moon, riddles and lullabies, like
Come on. Far down. Sleep. 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 Now, I don't know what fables or what fairy tales, because it's been ages, of course, since I was a little kid. And I remember the Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all that, and all the king's horses and all king's men and all that. I don't know if that's what fairy tale book that was part of, but I do recall that. And by the reaction, I would say that that's a spell as well.
Yes. The kings and the horsemen.
Oh.
The kings and the horsemen represent the That's it. This is
Well, I'm not sure you need to explain.
okay. I got muscle this. Here we go.
Sorry. A lot of purging going on here.
Okay. I'll just ask this and then I'll say it.
Okay. Well, I don't know how to explain that.
Yes. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
That's not clear enough. I'm going to pass on that.
Yes.
All right. So anyway, okay, Tweedledee, Tweedledum. One that I always felt was part of a satanic thing. Alice in Wonderland. So there's a lot of books. I wonder where the wild things are. Is that a spell book? Yeah. Now that one I'm guilty of buying. Where the wild things are. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Sire?
Oh, sorry, I had to go run and purge, but no, thank you.
Okay.
Questions, thank you.
Okay. So that's basically it. Then? All right. If there's anything else, feel free to.
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. All right. So we can move on with that. I think because there's still plenty of other questions to answer.
Let's see. Not as many, but I will keep going. So we were talking about fear, and someone asked the question, why are so many people afraid of the end?
Oh, well, I think I did address the whole topic of fear. That fear is a program, and it is literally an illusion, but it's a really hard one for people to get past. And I remember years ago, I had a real, I was really just tired of being afraid of things that were tormenting me from the other side, and I just fed up, and and I think I did tell the story before too, but again, I'll just repeat it. That when I asked those who were around me, which I call the ladies, they said that I said, well, I need some help to get through this fear thing. I've just had enough of it. And they said I need to get angry and target my anger towards those things that were literally tormenting me. And so that was the first step. And one of the other steps is just I had to challenge the information that I was getting that they really didn't have the power that they were pretending that they had when it came to myself. Now, each person is different. So there are individuals who are very, very deep down and very, very fearful of everything, and they will maybe try to, force themselves to confront fear or confront the darkness or so on and so forth. But they're so weakened that there's like a process of building up your energy levels so that you can challenge these things. But as it was told me some years ago, that there's two openings in my heart chakra that feeds energy, so that I don't run out of energy. That consistently feeds energy. So I challenged the darkness. I challenged going into places, going into which one places had to do with my house, and I had to deal with like a boiler, having boiler problems, which I believe has something to do with the density. I had the boiler problem in the first place, where I had to go down into this dark basement, and the problem would arrive where the water that was going through the boiler caused all the steam. And I would open the basement door, and the steam would hit me in the face, and I couldn't see anything, but I had to feel my way down there, and then get close enough so I could see what was on the gauge. But when I would go down there, I would immediately feel the presence of these things there, and at that time I tapped into this. It was more like a passion to deal with these things. That you can say maybe someone said, why are you angry? But it's like it was just this passion. I just wanted a piece of it. So it's like, yeah, you're not gonna scare me. I'm gonna get my hands on this. Somehow I'm gonna get my hands. And when I got to the point where I said, you know what? If you're so big and bad, Why don't you kill me? I said, because if you do, that means I'm on the side with you. I know that consciousness goes on. I'll be on the other side with you. And someone's heard this. I've told it in a couple different ways, but this is one of those situations where I use that. And there was another situation where I talked about the son in his bedroom where there was something, poltergeist banging the floor under his bed. And there's no pipes or anything under there, so all the little bunkers, they can go, take a flying leap. The bunkers are just frightened little children. They're just chickens. They want to see the reality of anything because they'll pee themselves. Reality, there's a lot of crap out there, a lot of crap on this. So literally, I challenged them that way. And I was really serious. I was fed up. Why exist like this? Take me down, I'll be on the side with you, and boy, there will be hell to pay for eternity. Yeah, that's more like it. Check the gauge, turn off the furnace, do what I gotta do, and head back upstairs. But as soon as it would happen, it was I gotta go down there. I can feel myself down there. And that's where it started, where I realized that I could actually defeat them. So what it is, this has to do with the mind. They convince the mind of things. It's about brainwash. Let's say public school, brainwash institutions. College, brainwash institutions. Church, brainwash institutions. All institutions brainwash. It's all keep you in the chicken coop and in the matrix. Oh. Are there any books out there other than my own that tells the truth? Book tell you the truth about the matrix? This is not Miss A, like on cue. Those of you who experienced muscle testing, like kinesiology, you know how it feels. Because you can't control whether your arm goes down or not. And I ask your higher consciousness questions. So when it comes to, let's say the individual's lying, 9 times out of 10, your higher consciousness wants out of this crap. So they'll tell me the truth. Because they want out. They say, I don't know about this freeloader that's lying to you. I want out of this. We can get further into some of this stuff later, and that's the alarm or the end of the forum. So Alexa, stop. So anyway, if anyone has any questions real quick, we can wrap it up and we can continue on the next forum. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, again, for participating.
Thank
Thank
you, Chief.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, you're welcome. And we'll talk to you soon. Okay, take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
สวัสดีค่ะ
Bye. Bye.